Hello and welcome back to the channel, folks. Today I wanted to do something similar to my previous video with the Broadway Limited Mikado and showcase a Big Boy model from Rivarossi that I super detailed and added sound to, and this is that model. This is a red box era from the mid-90s, I believe. It has a can motor, dual flywheels, and the first thing I'm going to do is remove the shell, and I've already taken out the screws for it. And I'm going to show you what's a little bit different on the inside before I show you the outside. Right off the bat, you can see it's got a lot going on. The smoke box is wired in place due to those surface mount LEDs and the classification lamps. I've taken a liking to having the decoder in the boiler of the locomotive itself. It makes wiring a little more simpler and you don't have to worry about the connection between the tender and the locomotive. Up front we have the speaker that originally came out of the tender of the Athearn Big Boy that I have. That speaker in that model was replaced by a Scale Sound Systems special speaker made for that Big Boy, and it's a very nice sounding speaker. You can see the bundle of wires going back over the motor to the Decoder Buddy Mini and the Soundtraxx Tsunami 2 Big Steam decoder. There's a Train Control Systems Keep Alive, I think that's a KA4 in there. And then underneath the model you can see the holes for the LEDs that I've drilled for the firebox flicker effect. That's also part of this model that I've added. It's one of the nice additions. You can see those right behind that last set of driving wheels. Here you can see the cab. I've painted the interior green. It was originally black molded plastic like the rest of the model. And I've added little seats. You can see the engineer there. I've got to have crew in my locomotive cabs. It's one of my many requirements for models, but it's a nice thing I like to see. Next, let's take a quick look at the tender here. Cracking open a Rivarossi tender is one of the most challenging things one can possibly do. I believe the newer Hornby variants of these models have a better design that's easier to get into, but for these models it's a tube with two ends glued together and it is a pain in the ass, but once you get it open you can put the decoder, speakers, whatever you want in there really. I've added real coal to the top of the plastic molded bunker and it looks a lot better, I think. Underneath you can see a whole lot of holes. I used to have a speaker in the tender and I wasn't really a fan of that. If I could fit it in the boiler I would, and I did. You can see here, this front piece just pops off, allowing you to get access to the inside. I put a bunch of weight in there, so you can see the glue and the steel weights in there. And the back is also a friction fit, and that pops off, and from there you can access the LED that acts as the backup light. The tail light here on the top is from a Revel model of Big Boy. The original broke off and has disappeared into the ether. So that piece is a replacement, and it looks fine. The wire goes through this channel that I've cut in the front of this front piece here, and I've added a third crew figure just kind of leaning against the front of the bunker there. On the back there's a KD coupler. It originally came with a horn hook, but I've replaced it with a that's undershank KD coupler. And so yeah, that's what that tender looks like. Very briefly, I'm going to show you how to reassemble a Big Boy model from Rivarossi if you happen to have one. It's just 3 screws, one that goes under this steam dome here. It's a very small screw, the smallest screw actually. And the next one is under the smoke box door, and it's kind of hard to get at. You can kind of see the hole there. And lastly is this screw under the firebox by the cab. And it's the biggest screw that holds everything together. And you can also see where I cut out space for wiring. Originally I had this channel cut before its current iteration with this 2-pin plug, which goes to this hole now. I had a lot of variations over the years of how I wired this thing up, and this is what I've settled on. Now that the model is back together, I'm going to go ahead and play some clips of it running. This is from my previous video on the running session, but first I'm going to show you the underside. These models are kind of interesting in the way they pick up power from the rails. There's this odd plunger system that pushes contacts against the backs of the wheels, and those tend to fail, and a lot of times people will replace them with bronze wipers or proper wire contacts, but I don't think it's really necessary, at least not right now. It also picks up power from the trailing wheels and the front bogie wheels, and with the current keeper it has never really failed me. It's been running perfectly fine, perfectly smooth, and picking up power. as necessary. So before diving into the nitty-gritty on what I've done to change this model, let me show you what it looked like out of the box. Now, I purchased this model from a gentleman off of the Bachman forums. I may have mentioned this before on another video, but purchased this as I think I was 13 years old at the time. Parents were not really excited about me just buying something off of someone off of some forum. But I took a gamble. He wanted 150 for it, and I had that much saved, and they let me purchase it with any possible consequences I'd have to live with. And the consequence was I got a really, really nice running model out of it, and I cherished this model. But it originally looked like this. It was 4003, all black plastic, no gray smoke box or firebox, and I ran it like this for a number of years on my under the couch oval, and that's how it was. At some point in the mid-2010s, I painted it with a Tamiya gray of some sort, couldn't tell you which, but I painted the smoke box and the firebox this color. One of the very first details I applied to this model was the addition of number board decals rather, from Microscale, I believe is the company, and I just added the X and the 4003 to what the model came with. Next up, I began adding a lot of extra detail pieces and parts out of brass wire, and a lot of details came from CalScale off of eBay, just purchasing brass detail pieces, bending brass wire to the correct shape. The globe valves up by the whistle are just glued to some brass pipe. I also bent very small little handrails up there by the whistle as well, because those are present on the real thing. I also added Tichy Train Group locomotive builder plate decals. These only come in 2 per builder plate, unfortunately, but they had the American Locomotive Company on there, so I added those to the sides of the smoke box. And then one of the biggest changes to this model was the removal of the molded on throttle linkage and replacing that with a cal scale detail kit, which included some straight brass wire and the linkage arms themselves, I guess, the pieces necessary for it. That was a very long process to chisel off the molded on detail and then replace it. But once it was replaced, I then repainted the boiler of the model with Tamiya flat black out of a spray can. It was a perfect fit for the original black plastic, and I can't tell that it ever had a molded on throttle linkage before this. I also added some handrails up around the sand domes, pipework on the footboards going back to the cab, and additional microscale decals on the air tanks on the side. Those are the pressure tested decals. And then back by the generator, I've got pipework going from that, and more handrails by the cab roof. And just in case you're wondering what kind of materials I used for this particular model, I used this K&S Precision Metals brass rod. It's easy to bend, it solders, it paints okay. I usually will prime it and paint it, and then I don't touch it. It's usually how I handle metal pieces on models when I'm adding that extra detail and that extra pipework. I just don't touch it. Well, I think that's gonna just about do it for this one. I really do love this model. I've had it for a very long time now, and it's given me some trouble over the years. I've had to re-gauge those wheels a little bit. They didn't hit the NMRA standards gauge. They were actually very narrow, but once I've done that, it's run very well, and besides giving it some general maintenance, haven't had any issues with it. And I enjoy having it. In addition to the Athearn model that I have, I think they complement each other very well. The only thing that I really need to do left on this model of 4003 is to replace the front coupler with a working KD. It's fallen out and I need to remount it. It definitely lacks compared to the newer stuff by Broadway Limited and Athearn, but it is a mold that's 50 years old at this point, but it still looks good, and the newer ones definitely run really well. But this was a really nice model, and I'm happy to have it in the collection. And I'm really happy with how the super detailing on this one worked out as well. The Rivarossi Big Boy, most of Rivarossi's stuff I would argue is like a canvas, and you can just add as much detail as you want to it until you've either gotten tired or you've run out of things to add. But that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.